This episode of The Adam Messer Show is brought to you by Valhalla Books. The Devil's Due, or Nothing Is Ever As It Seems, horror anthology is due to release on Halloween 2020. For more information, you can check out Valhalla Books at valhallabooks.com. All right, welcome everybody, and thank you for tuning in today. You're listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show, and I am your host, Adam Messer. And my special guest today is Bobby Nash, who has been on the show several times with me and a good friend of mine. Welcome, Bobby. Thank you for being here today with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Adam. It's always good to be back with you.
Yeah, I love it when you're on the show, man. I always have a great time. And, man, you have been up to a lot this year.
It has been busy.
Yeah, I know. Well, the last time you were on, we were talking about it's been a couple months, but we were talking about, like, a lot of the events have been canceled and so on. And since then, there have been a ton of virtual events, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like Continual with Jim Nettles and the gang, and then Multiverse, you were part of that, and Dragon Con, you did some stuff with them.
Yes.
Man, you have been busy.
Yeah, September and October were really, really busy with Dragon Con.
Mm-hmm.
I had Dragon Con, Multiverse, Imaginarium. We've done stuff for Continual. I've done stuff for Go Indie Now.
You did an interview with the library, and
yeah, I've done stuff for the library. So the virtual panel thing has really been a wonderful outreach since we can't do in-person cons.
Yeah.
And I'm loving them. They're a lot of fun, and I'm getting to talk with people. I'm meeting a lot of new people because I'm not, like when you're at a con, the panels are the people at the con.
Yeah.
But because of, we're doing them from home, I'm doing panels with people in different countries.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And so it's been really great. I've met a lot of very interesting and talented people. I've gotten to talk to either conventions or, like you mentioned, the library. I did an interview with a library in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It was an opportunity to get my work in front of people in Chicago. So I'm loving the fact that people have come up with this. I'm not sure who did it first, but coming up with this idea of using the internet to continue this panel outreach and to keep people entertained and occupied while we're trapped at home.
Yeah. I think, with last year's, we're still in the same calendar year, but last year's school year having to switch over to Zoom, and then a lot of office workers having to switch to Zoom. I think what happened was the conventions, I know for a fact a lot of them held out as long as they could because of their contracts. Mm-hmm. They couldn't just cancel willy-nilly because they had contracts, for the spaces that they rented and with the, different actors and guests and stuff like that. But I know that they held out and tried to hold out as long as they could, hoping that this pandemic would, subside or whatever, and it just hasn't. And so I think switching over, it's been really interesting. I mean, it's one of those things, a la carte, that, if you, like, say for instance, a convention normally, if you don't go to the panel, you just missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, if you can't watch the panel, you can watch it later.
Yeah. Well, and there have been some really creative things they've done. Like Dragon Con had a virtual dealer's room.
Yeah.
Where you could go, and people who would have had tables there to begin with could put their stuff up on this website, and so it was all one. So like to buy, like for the people shopping, you could go through there and just pick the stuff you wanted. You paid one time, and the money's filtered down through the convention to the people.
Oh, okay.
Instead of having to go to my table, buy something, swipe your card, go to your table, buy something, swipe the card.
You can get like all one thing in one cart type thing, right?
Exactly. And so there's a lot of this stuff too. I'm trying to, as a creator, I'm thinking, what can is there anything how can I use this going forward?
Yeah.
I would hate for this to just stop
Well,
when.
something that I did with this year was actually I started working on building connections with people one on one
Hmm.
and doing the email list, which in the past I really haven't spent a whole lot of time with it, but with the Valhalla Books thing, I was like, okay, well, if I want to connect with the people that want to check this stuff out,
Hmm.
and not just spam, whatever, because sometimes social media is hit or miss, right?
Right.
But the folks that sign up for the newsletter, they seem like they're more engaged, because they want to be there.
Yeah, yeah. As especially as an independent creator, which
Yeah.
is what you and I are both. We were both solidly in that independent creator field. There's the odds of bookstores carrying us is a lot thinner, slimmer than bigger publishers.
Oh yeah,
Just
and they've
just
been
for the
struggling
nature.
this year too. I mean,
Yeah, just by the nature of, especially like I'm a small press publisher for just my stuff, so my books are print on demand for paper.
hmm
Bookstores aren't going to carry that. So, and I know this. I mean, so as independent creators, if we know this, we can try to like put our marketing and promotion efforts in other ways. And like you were just saying, we, I don't promote to bookstores to then have the bookstores promote to the readers. As an independent creator, I go straight for the readers.
hmm
I want to give books to the readers, and so my goal is to find ways to reach them. And it's not easy, but I mean, we
no,
try
no.
all kinds of different things and see what works and what doesn't. It's very experimental. Ooh, I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I won't try that anymore. Let me try this. And we all do it. We all come up with different ways to get our work in front of people. And
One of the things I think worked really well, and folks, me and Bobby, we've been friends. Well, gosh, man, it's been like I think 2015 or something like that.
something like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
or I think it was around 2015 or maybe earlier than that because I met Randy in like 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I met you like not too
Yeah.
long after.
Right, because Randy introduced us because
Yeah,
you were starting the quill.
Randy Bishop. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and so yeah, okay, so that was 2016 then. I thought I met you before that, but anyway,
well, I think we talked in
yeah,
2015 before.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah. And then when I started the quill, I was like, "Hey, Bobby," I remember that.
the
Okay,
quill
so
was fun. I had fun. I had fun doing the quill. The
dude, I
quill
can't
was
believe it's been a couple
it was a
years
good
since
time.
we
Yeah.
actually had that. Oh my gosh! But talking about like different stuff or whatever with the anthology, Raven Crescent, Josh Vasquez kind of kicked it off. I did the first set of like graphics, right,
Hmm.
and they were kind of dark and like real horror like based, and then Josh did a couple of those ones with the book cover, and I was like, oh, that's
Hmm.
pretty cool. And then Raven, she did one for each one of the author in the anthology for the Devil's Due, and I thought that was really neat. I liked the one that she did for yours, the Dante. I liked all of them,
Hmm.
but I liked how she did that that Western theme, for yours.
All right. Yeah. One of the things I'm really been impressed with this anthology. I've been in a lot of anthologies over the years, and I do think you have assembled a crew of a lot of people that are putting in the extra effort to promote.
Yeah,
Not all creators promote. I mean, it's just a fact of
yeah,
life, and a lot of people are afraid of it. A lot of people don't understand it. I mean, I hear those are the two things I hear all the time: is I don't understand promotion, or I'm it's just not me. I'm not comfortable doing it, and unfortunately, as a creator, not just as a writer, any kind of creator, if you're not out talking up your stuff, there's a good chance people aren't going to find it.
yeah. And the other thing too that I kind of think about with promotion is like with social media, it's such a like a pan flash in the pan type thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, you see something one time, it's like on to the next thing. Well, with radio commercials and TV commercials, it's a lot of repetition. It's
Right.
like you hear the same, motto or logo or whatever. It's a lot of that repetition. And with the virtual world or social media or whatever, there's a 3-second attention span, if that,
Right.
you know, and it's the stuff that goes viral is like either really strange or weird, or just so absurd, or something that's like really, on the other spectrum is like really heartwarming and fun, or something clever, and it's hard. I feel like it's harder when you're trying to, hit that ding in the universe, and you're trying to, reach, because I know that our anthology is not for everybody. I know that. I know that it's not for every horror reader out there. I know that. It's just trying to say, hey, I'm not trying to, spam everybody. I want the people that are interested in that kind of stuff to check it out. I don't want somebody who likes, killer clown type stuff. I'm not trying to sit there and say, hey, this is going to be a great story for you because you like killer clown stuff. I mean, or like somebody who likes epic fantasy type stuff, It's like, hey, I know that it's not going to be the right thing for everybody. But I feel like it is for us and the group that we have with the anthology. I feel like it is a good mesh of authors who have different backgrounds and experience, and every one of their stories I feel like came together on this premise. A deal gone wrong. Nothing. Nothing ever. No deal is ever as good as it seems. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a classic. That's a classic story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's I mean, when it comes to promotion, I mean, you have to know your audience. We always like to say, oh, I'd love to just throw out as broad a net as possible and catch everybody, but that's just not. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of know, okay, this is the kind of book we're writing. Where are those readers?
Yeah.
And then you try to find them, because you're gonna, and especially on social media,
the
signal to noise ratio is.
Oh, even with the virtual convention stuff, there's been so many of these things. Like a normal person, who goes to a convention. I mean, like, you go to a lot of conventions as a guest or a special guest, but even that, you can only do so many, and a normal person is not going to go to, as many conventions are available right now online. Like in a normal year, most people would not go to that. Like last year, how many conventions do you think you actually worked at?
Oh, geez. I do about 2 to 3 events a month. They're not always conventions, but events a month.
So like 30 something?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it seems like there's been 30 something things since like the last time we talked. Right.
Well, the beauty of the virtual panels, is because they're on the internet, they last forever.
Well, that's what I was saying, like, kind of circling back around when you're saying, like, moving forward as an author, how can you incorporate this for, like, next year? And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, well, maybe there's a convention that you can't, physically do next year, but you could do, a virtual panel. Right.
And in terms of promotion, a year from now, our book, our anthology's coming out, this month.
Yeah.
But a year from now, I can still share a link to our panel.
Yeah.
About this and say, hey, our book came out last Halloween. It's this Halloween. If you missed it, and so that is opportunities for us to do that in the future. Where
that's one of the things that I like. I mean, like, that's one of the reasons why I put the podcast up after the radio show, because I know most people are not going to be able to listen on a Sunday at 3 p.m.
Right. And there are links on my website. I have the videos posted on my website, links to where you can find everything. Plus, I put them in my newsletter. So,
and the cool thing about it is, like, it ties in though, because the folks that like your stuff might enjoy this. They might enjoy the anthology, and that I feel like that's a better way, because honestly, I know that you can advertise, and I know you can sink a lot of money into advertising. I don't have a bunch of money to sink into advertising.
Right.
So
right. I remember we mentioned we're indie creators.
Yeah. I mean, like, we don't have people bankrolling us and saying, hey.
Yeah. I don't have Disney money.
Right. And that's the thing about it. I think, well, like, with us doing the dead pixel picture thing. Josh and I are doing that dead pixel picture thing where we, I said, hey Josh, I really would like to do a movie short about the book, and Josh came back with a script, and then I got a couple of actors together and we shot it, and we're going to be doing that with the it's just different ways. I feel like trying to make stuff that people enjoy, and then putting it out there. I mean, you do a ton of stuff. Like you do comic books, you do screenwriting. That's one of the things I wanted to talk with you today about is screenwriting. I need to do the station ID real quick. Everybody, you're tuning in today. You're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. If you are listening to the podcast, please think about giving a subscription to it. Because I have a show on every week, and I talk with awesome people like Bobby Nash. I talk with authors and artists and entertainers. And so, Bobby, I want to ask you, talking about the screenwriting, and matter of fact, hold on one second. We had a question from Jason. Let me pull it up real quick here. Because I know it's something about pop culture, but let me pull up what his question said.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when he posted the question, but I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Yeah,
I took a screenshot of it, so I wanted to pull it up. Let's see here, Jason. Where are we at? That's part of the problem of being an indie creator. Like, there's always so much stuff on my phone. All right, it says Jason Waltman. He says, "What pop culture is an influence on your writings, Bobby?"
Okay, well, I am a very action-oriented writer. I tend to. There's a lot of. I like my stories to move. There's a lot of kinetic energy. There's chases and running and fighting and. Very, very action oriented. That's just something I'm a fan of is the action. So, and there are different pop culture things depending on what I'm doing. But with like my snow books or things like that, E-Voice or whatnot, I'm very inspired by the things I grew up reading and watching. Very action oriented stuff. I was a big fan of, PI shows or action shows. So growing up, things like the A-Team or Rockford Files or Magnum PI or Star Trek or Buck Rogers or things like that or Batman, fueled that action-inspired storytelling in me. I wanted to see, chases and, things like that were really, impacted me. And so I don't try to ape those particular writing styles, but I do take a lot of influence in the type of story. I'm a very big fan of mysteries and action and thrillers, and I'm also a big fan of stories that take place outdoors in like the woods or the mountains or so location becomes a very important factor in my stories. A lot of times, so we're tour. A lot of times, you hear people say that, oh yeah, the city was a character. It very much becomes very important of where these stories are set. And so that's all stuff I learned pretty early on. Was yes, this does Magnum work if Magnum's not in Hawaii? Sure, but it's different.
Yeah,
it's not the same show if he's in Florida.
Or Blue Bloods.
Right. Does Rockford Files work if he was not living on the beach and that kind of thing? There are very elemental things about those characters.
It's like, does Sherlock Holmes work if he was in Australia?
Exactly. I will say that I will say this. One of the things that really surprised me by how well it worked was a few years back when they did the show Elementary, which was a modern day Sherlock Holmes in New York.
Well, I think bigger cities like New York and London, they all have like a kind of a connection because of the the grit that in the darker underbelly of the city. Right,
because you can tell things. Because they're, bigger cities like that, there's a level to it. You have street level stories where you're on the ground, where there's dirt on the ground, and it's a little darker because you're in shadow from the tall buildings. But then you get these things where you have to go up and talk to CEOs, and you're in these brightly lit offices with floor to ceiling windows overlooking the vastness of the city.
Right.
And it's a very very different aesthetic where you are in. Yeah, so
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff's fun to play with. Yeah.
I think it's neat because it kind of reminds me of like Play-Doh or like building clay or Legos or anything like that. Where you start off with this. Well, Legos are already a finished product, but as little bricks, you could consider them like raw materials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just like Play-Doh or clay or whatever. It's already a product itself, but then you take that product and you make something with it.
Right.
And I feel like writing is a lot like that. It's crafting and honing it out, or whittling away the unwanted parts or whatever, and it's neat because every writer, well, in a good way, I guess, every writer has their own flavor, right? And so when you're writing, say for instance, Night Vale story, you're going to have a different take on that character than someone else who's writing a character, right?
Right. And when you do, like with Night Vale, that was because that's a pre-existing character that's not mine.
Right.
You are a little more conscious of how you're treating her, because she's not mine. I can't take her out and break I can't break her.
Mm-hmm.
I have to return her to the toy box in the same condition I found her. I can put her through her paces, but at the end of the book, she still needs to be in one piece. And so sometimes doing licensed stuff like that will give you you play with those a little differently. Whereas, characters that I create and I own, there are opportunities where, you could lose a hand.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think about comic books with that. Like Jim Lee's Batman is a lot different than Frank Miller's Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about the same character, but they're totally different. And speaking of that, kind of going back to the screenwriting, let's talk about your Star Trek episode.
Okay. Well, I wrote those. I met these guys. The Starship.
Can you start off with the name of it, the show, and all?
Starship Farragut. I met the Starship Farragut guys at a convention.
Mm-hmm.
We were at I believe it was I don't remember the year, but we were at Connuga in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a very literary con. And the guests are not in a room. We're in the hallways of the hotel.
Okay, so when people are walking by the foot traffic.
Right. So, excuse me. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
We were across from each other.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, if you need to get a drink,
Sorry.
go ahead. You're fine.
Naturally, I never cough until I'm like doing a podcast or a radio interview.
I know. Like the other day, I had swallowed some air the wrong way, and I couldn't stop coughing. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we were there. We were at this convention, and they were across from me. They had done at that point, I think they had 2 live action episodes, a couple of short pieces, and an animated episode. And so they were across from me, and they had TVs going, playing those episodes over and over.
Oh no.
And over. So, and I got to talking with them, because when you're at a con, the cons are ebb and flow. You're busy, then there's nothing.
Yeah.
And so you talk to your neighbors, and so I got to talking with Michael Day, who was one of the producers, and that was the first time we'd met, and we got to chatting, and by the on Sunday, as I went over to say tell them I was getting to the end of the show. It's like, I've been listening to these all weekend. I think I have an idea for a story. And he's like, great, write it up, send it to me. We'll look at it. And the way I work, I can't do anything just for the heck of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't sit down and write a screenplay just to write a screenplay and see if I can do it.
Right.
I have to do it for a reason, because I can't just sit. If I sit down and work on something that I don't have a reason to do, my brain's going, you have deadlines. You should be working on this other stuff.
Yeah.
So knowing I was doing it for them allowed me to work on it. It allowed me to give myself permission to work on it. So I wrote this episode for Starship Farragut, and the premise of Starship Farragut is it is a Star Trek fan film. It's set in the Star Trek, the original series universe, where Kirk and Spock are flying around on their 5-year mission. It's just another ship in Starfleet with new characters, and so I had watched their episodes, and I went and watched them again, and went to their website and was getting insight on all the characters. So I wrote this plot, but it was the same thing. It was just like with the Night Veil. I knew that I could tell this story, but at the end of it, just like a regular Star Trek episode, needs to be them on the bridge flying off to their next adventure. So I wrote this. I started writing this story, and they actually came to me in the middle of it and said, one of our actors is thinking about stepping back a little. How would you like to kill him? I'm like, okay, so we can work that in. And then then they came out, well, we needed you to kill him in a Star Trek way, so he's alive at the end of it. I was like, no problem, I can do that too. So I wrote this, I worked that in, and just like working in any TV, there's going to be notes from the network, or notes from the producers, and so you work all that in. And so I just wrote an episode. It wasn't, I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. I just said, okay, I'm going to take these characters and I'm going to put them in a situation. I'm going to tell that story. And but also, I want to tell a Star Trek story, because not all stories are Star Trek stories, if that makes any sense. Yeah. You can create a story that oh, that's not a Star Trek story. And excuse me. So I wrote this story that fit in the format of what a Star Trek story was. Because with Star Trek stories, especially the original series, there was always a moral or a allegory, things like that. So to modern issues, and so I wrote some stuff in with that in mind and told a story, and they liked it, and we did some back and forth, changes on the script and cleanup, and they were like, we're going to shoot it. And I'm like, well, that's awesome. One of my biggest regrets is I was unable to go down when they were shooting. I would have loved to have been there to watch them shoot.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And so they made the episode, and the director made some changes on set, and so there were a few different things that changed here and there. And then they had an open house down there at the sets. The sets are actually down there near you guys. They're down at Kingsland, Georgia.
Yeah, Wynn Strock has been there a couple times.
Yeah, and so they had an open house, and they invited me down for the open house, and they gave me a table, and I threw some books out, and so I met a lot of the cast. Got to tour the sets. It was worth it to go tour the sets. The sets are absolutely gorgeous. The people that worked on those sets, they did a fantastic job. And this is all fan run. This is all done by people that are doing it because they love Star Trek.
Oh, wow. Yeah, for fans by fans.
Exactly. That's what it was. This is what we want to do because we love it. And so I went in there, we did that. I got to see a rough cut of the episode while I was there, which was really cool. We all ducked into a closet and watched it on like a laptop. It was really cool. And then later, once the episode, because you have to go through the visual effects and all that stuff, they had to premiere at the sets. And so a buddy of mine and I rode down together. We went down, drove all the way to Kingsland, Georgia, watched a movie, drove all the way home.
Oh, wow. That's a long drive for you.
It was a long day. But we went down there. There was like about 200 people came for the screening. That was awesome. So we're in there, we're sitting in the audience. So some of the cast and director and all are up on the stage, and they're talking. And so we sit back, the movie starts, and it opens up, and there's the teaser and all this, and then it goes into their opening credits, and it comes out of the opening credits, and you see the ship coming and flying by, and there's the title, and it says written by my name, and I reached over and nudged my friend. I says, I'm good. We can go right now.
Oh, wow.
I was like, this is awesome. This
Oh,
is just it.
wow.
But it's people liked it. After the screening was over, we milled about and talked to people, toured the sets again. That was cool, and so it was really fun. So it was a really fun experience. I was pleased to know that I could do it, and so during the course of all that, they were starting up a second series using those same sets that was going to do new stories with Kirk, Spock, McCoy, with new people playing them. And they had a script, but it wasn't quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so, somehow in the talking, the Farragut guys suggested me to them. So they sent me this. We talked on the phone. They sent me the script and asked if I could touch it up or give it a polish or whatever you want to call it. And so I went and I did I did some rewrites and changes on the script, and that became the first episode of Star Trek Continues, which I'm not credited for, but I did a lot of work on. But again, it was cool to see that I could do it, and as far as I was concerned, I did one other one that never got filmed. A friend of mine and I were going to write it together, and it never happened. Okay. And then, as far as I was concerned, I was done until I met Randy Landers, who does he was in Alabama at the time. He's now in Kentucky, and we were talking, and I came up with an idea while touring his sets, which turned into the hospital ship Marie Curie episode I wrote.
Yeah, that was a really good episode.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wrote that, and that was fun, and I had a really good time. And so again, I figured I was done.
Hang tight with that thought. We got to do the mid-hour break, Bobby.
Okay.
And we'll come back, and we're going to talk more about that episode. So everybody, you're tuning in today. You're listening to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. This is the Adam Messer Show. I'm your host, Adam Messer, and my special guest today is Bobby Nash, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes here.
The Live Oak Public Library System offers local residents access to hundreds of thousands of movies, television programs, albums, audiobooks, ebooks, and digital comic books for free on your streaming television and mobile devices through the Hoopla app. Supported devices include Roku, Fire, Apple TV, iPhone, and Android, among others. The selection is vast. All you'll need is your library card. Find the Hoopla app on your device and more information at liveoakpl.org.
Thank you to everyone who made a financial contribution during this year's on-air membership campaign for WRUU. Because of your generosity, we're able to continue bringing you the music and talk programs that you've come to expect. And we're back on the air with our regular programming. Thanks for your financial support of Savannah's best local talk radio, as voted by readers in the most recent Connect Savannah poll, WRUU 107.5 FM. That's what we're all about. If you somehow missed the campaign, you can donate anytime at WRUU.org. Donations keep us going. All of us here at the station greatly appreciate what you, the community, does to make Community Radio 107.5 possible. Here's to another great year of radio.
This portion of WRUU-LP Savannah Soundings programming is made possible by listeners like you and Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day is celebrating its 40th year serving the Savannah community with produce, vitamins, and supplements, and a deli and juice bar. Brighter Day is located at 1102 Bull Street at the south end of Forsyth Park. More information available at 912-236-4703 or brighterdayfoods.com.
WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
All right, everybody, and here is Sebastian Messer playing some live music for us. Awesome, Bass. Thank you so much. What was that one?
Waiting on the Day by John Mayer.
Oh, okay. Cool. Really cool. Bobby, you there?
I am here.
Awesome. So we were talking before the break, y'all, about Bobby's screenwriting endeavors and the Star Trek universe. And you had just started talking to us about the episode of Marie Curie.
Oh, yeah. So they had a really cool concept, and I was at a con in Hoover, Alabama.
Do y'all notice a theme here? Bobby does a lot of conventions.
Yeah, so many of my stories start with, well, I was at a con.
I met this guy while I was at a con.
So, yeah, Randy was doing these episodes with different ships. They were set in the Star Trek universe, and they had built sets in Alabama. And I was down at the convention. We were both there, and we didn't know each other, but we knew someone in common who had suggested that you guys should meet. And so we were introduced, and that after the convention, it's like, come, we'll give you a tour of the sets. And so I already suspected I was going to get asked to write something, and I went in going, no, not going to do it. Don't have time to do it. I don't have time.
Just come see the set, Bobby. Just come hang out with us for a little bit. Yeah.
So we toured the sets, and the sets were beautiful. They did a really good job with the sets, and we were just chit chatting and hanging out on the bridge of the ship that they had built, and we're just sitting there talking. And I was like, man, I came into this going, I'm not going to write anything, but now I have an idea. But what they're doing, because at this point, the fan film guidelines had changed. It used to be there was an incident where guidelines changed. I don't want to go. You guys have probably all heard it or can look it up. But suddenly, doing series like the Starship Farragut was doing or Star Trek Continues was doing was no longer allowed.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I would like to interject as a fan myself. Around the same time that all this happened was when they were doing the movies, and they didn't really have a show per se, and people were missing the television show a lot, and so it kind of had a need, and then it became really popular, especially the Continues one was really popular, and there was the other series, I can't remember the name of it, but they had raised a bunch of money and yada yada yada. And
I think that's where the big problem came.
That's where the IP problems came in. It's fan based stuff versus making money off of corporations' IP. It's a big difference.
Yeah, they didn't mind you doing little fundraisers to buy wood and paint,
props and costumes,
and, make stuff to make. Yeah, they didn't mind that. But some of these productions started making over the $1 million mark. And
they're like, whoa, Captain Kirk belongs to us.
Yeah, and, and not all of that money, some of that money was going into people's pockets as opposed to back into the production. It's as I understand.
People were earning salaries from it, basically.
Right, so, yeah. So anyway, Randy they're doing, the guidelines won't allow for movies and things like that. So he's doing little 10-minute vignettes, just a little story that can be told in 10 minutes. And so I was like, 10 minutes, I can do 10 minutes. So I wrote this script for him and sent it to him, and they liked it. And they were still in the early stages. It was so weird. I'm so impressed it came out as well as it did. Because when I wrote the script, I had no idea who the characters would be. I had no character names. It's literally the script has captain, helmsman, doctor, security office, and because they were still getting their crews together. So I didn't really have a whole lot, so the characters are pretty generic, and then so the actors brought a lot to their character quirks. With the script, so it turned out great. I'm very proud of the episode.
Oh yeah, it was. I feel like as a fan, it was a really good. It was true to the original Star Trek era.
Well, since then, I have written a second Marie Curie script. I dreamt a story. I woke up going, "Ooh, that's good," and I wrote it in one day. and just to get it out of my head. And so I sent it to them, and they liked it. I don't know when or if it'll get filmed. I'm assuming it will, but so they've since moved from Alabama to Kentucky. So if you use the same actors, they've got to go to Kentucky to film and things like that. So I'm hoping it'll happen. It was a fun. I liked the story. One of the things I noticed was that the captain in the Marie Curie stuff never really leaves the bridge. And I was like, I want to give the captain something to do. So I wrote a captain-centric story, and that Randy liked. So, that's good. So hopefully they'll be able to do it. But it was fun. So it's fun to play in those. And, whenever I do something for them, I do it because it's fun. I'm not going to make a dime off any of that. And I don't expect to. That's not what you do fan films for. It's one of those things. It was fun to do, and it's cool to watch the video and go, I wrote that.
Yeah.
It's like there are moments where a character will say something, and I'll just get a thrill because I know that I put those words in that character's mouth.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So it's a lot of fun, and so it's one of those things. If I have a lull in my schedule, which doesn't happen a lot, but if I have a lull in my schedule, sometimes I'll do stuff like that just because it's fun. So that's fun. But I'd like to do other screenplay stuff. It's just one of those things that hopefully one day it'll happen. I also last year, or it was either late last year or early this year, I forget which. I adapted.
Yeah, 2020 has been like a decade long.
Yeah, I know, right?
It could have been last week for all we know.
I adapted 2 of my short stories that published short stories into audio scripts for a publisher out of England.
Oh, nice.
And so obviously they've been a little delayed, but they've been accepted. They're full cast audios. It's not like an audio book.
Yeah.
It's full cast audio.
It's like a radio production type thing, like they used to do back in the day.
Yeah, very Big Finishy type. What Big Finish does with a lot of the Doctor Who stuff, and so I did those. Those are fun, and so I'm very excited to hear those. So it's fun. It's fun to experiment and play with different things. I have an idea for a movie in my head that I would like to just write.
Speaking of that, when I wrote my first vampire novella, Blood Thrasher, I wrote it like if it was our movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I was surprised, I started doing that Ray Bradbury challenge. I did like 54 days of reading a poem, a short story, and an essay a night. But one of the things that I was surprised was that he had a lot of different movies and TV shows adapted from his writings and his works or whatever. And he said that he had often college, film students or just, any, like amateur type film student or whatever, they would do a better job following the story because when they would come to him and ask him, hey, we want to do this story, and he would tell them, follow the story, because each scene was set up. And he said that he wrote it with the idea in mind that it was going to be a movie. Like he would see it. And that's how, when I'm writing like fiction, that's how I see it in my head. It's like, the scene's playing out or whatever, and these characters are doing these different things. But that's one of the ways I like action. I like comedy. I like, a little bit of romance and that kind of stuff. But, I like where the story moves. I don't, I think you and I were talking about one time about, like 10 pages of, people walking across the, the hallway type thing. And, I don't like that kind of stuff. I know some people do. I know that especially some epic fantasy readers love, like, and the napkins had, this little detail on it, and it was, laced this way, and it, they folded it, like they like that, 4 paragraphs about, the napkin setting on the table. And that's cool, but that's just not my thing.
Nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, that's just not my thing,
Yeah. But that's the beauty of writing, is for every writer there are readers that love what they write. That's their story.
Yeah.
Now the trick is connecting writer to reader.
Yeah. Speaking of that, connecting, you're all listening to us here right now on WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I want to give a shout out to Jason for giving us that listener question, Bobby.
Thank you. I hope I answered it well.
Did you have anything you want to add to it, like pop culture wise?
Well, I mean,
because Jason's like one of your big fans, and I want to make sure we do him right.
Yeah, met Jason through Facebook. Jason is also a writer. Jason is writing some RPG stuff. He is a co-owner of a company that's creating role-playing games, but he's also a fan of the character Domino Lady, which I've written, and he started writing Domino Lady stories himself that he puts on his Facebook page.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so he has a lot of fun with the character, and he's invented other characters to team up with Domino Lady and things like that. So they've been pretty cool. And he posts them on Facebook, and they're a lot of fun to read.
Cool.
And but with pop culture, I mean, inspiration kind of comes from everywhere.
Oh yeah.
I mean, certainly, in the age we live in, I grew up inundated with pop culture. So, there are certain.
I think when they figured out MTV would sell, like that was a huge wave for pop culture because you had MTV, you had all those cartoons from the 80s that were like geared towards toy sales. I mean that's not that's not even the beginnings of it, but I mean like I just think of like Transformers, for example. At one point somebody said that Transformers was the best 30-minute commercial ever.
Oh yeah.
Because every episode, it was the same kind of plot. The Autobots versus the Decepticons. The Autobots were in dire straits because the Decepticons had this new, like let's say Devastator came, right? They had this new, bad guy that's like, so much more powerful and going to destroy the Autobots. And then the Autobots, figure out, oh, wait a minute, they're the Dinobots. We can use the Dinobots to fight Devastator, And those characters were all toys that were coming out in the toy line.
Well, I've over the years I've gotten to know people, and I've met and talked with and become friends with a couple of guys that worked on some of those shows.
Yeah.
And one of the questions I had was like, I was more of a G.I. Joe. I like Transformers.
Oh yeah, I love G.I. Joe too.
More of a G.I. Joe guy.
Yeah, I love G.I. Joe too.
And so, I was like, okay, it's like I just have to ask, why are you sending the G.I. Joe who's built for like the snow gear? Why is that guy in the episode where they're going into the jungle?
Yeah,
and they're like, we had no control. It's like
it was the same plot. It was the same plot. Like, like the Joes versus Cobra. They're always like in dire straits because Cobra. You could substitute Cobra Commander for Megatron and Megatron for Cobra Commander, and Duke for Optimus and Optimus for Duke. In any episode.
But they would get lists of characters from Hasbro. Hasbro owns all this, and Hasbro would say this episode has to have these characters because these guys are being pushed, on the, with poison. They're like, but we're doing a jungle show. Why are we using the guy in the snow gear?
Dude, Transformers the movie, like when they killed Optimus Prime off, there was so much backlash that they had to bring him back because, all these kids were like, crying and
that hurt. I mean, I was young, because I was about the right age for all that, so it hurt. I mean, seeing,
Well, and the funny thing, Well, the funny thing about it is, like, just talking about pop culture, all of that stuff. Like when I was a kid, I remember, like there was not the like the action figures and stuff that were coming out then. The only ones that I remember before that were like you had Star Wars, which had come out kind of like the late 70s, but before that, they didn't have a whole lot of action figures. They had those bigger G.I. Joes, but the G.I. Joes with the cartoon were the smaller, newer versions. And so like that, the stuff that kids grew up on in the 80s had a huge influence on the pop culture today. D&D was like, late 70s, early 80s.
The 80s was also that period too where, they were very closely tied together. There was a comic, or there was a cartoon that went with the toy line, and there was a comic that. There was like you had the triangle.
Yep.
And that was if one. if one of those things wasn't successful, those lines didn't last long.
No, they roll them out and they get them out and they, like the sectars. I remember the sectars. That was like really cool for like about a minute.
Yeah, there are some really good YouTube documentaries about the 80s. There's a couple guys that do like episodes about the different shows and looking at it from that perspective of the toys, the comics, the show,
Well, even like the crazy thing too is like we're talking mostly about like action figures and stuff like that, but there was also like Care Bears and My Little Pony and like Teddy Ruxpin and.
But those are the same thing though. I mean, they still had you had the cartoon, you had the toys,
exactly the same,
and you had books. Now they weren't necessarily like Teddy Brooks, but I don't think got comics. But they had the little
read-along books and whatever,
right? And the coloring books and the He-Man had. I remember as a kid, He-Man came with comics. But
those little mini comics, man, were so cool.
There was the books and tapes that came together, and
they like early days. Remember they had the little records, the little play-along record.
Yep.
I think and I feel like all of that, like kind of growing up with that era. Then as an adult, they started coming back out with like nostalgic adult collectibles. And now, like for example, Transformers. People don't know this, and I'm a big Transformer nerd, y'all, so we're talking about pop culture. So here's my Transformer thing. Transformers has been a toy line and never not been a toy line since 1984. They have put out new toys every year since 1984.
And actually earlier than that, because they started in Japan when they were called something else.
Yeah, well, see, in Japan, they had the Diaclone series. But 84 is when Hasbro licensed the rights to that, and they called them the Transformers.
Yep, started giving them names.
Yeah, and Bob.
That's where Bob Budiansky from Marvel Comics was doing a lot of that.
Like he created so many names in like a weekend.
Right, kind of like how Larry Hama kind of did the same thing with G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
they were like, "Here's what we've got," and Larry made.
We've got this figure. What's his name?
Right.
You're like gung ho. He looks like a gung ho.
Yeah. This guy carries a gun. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So stuff like, but yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, and those guys knew. I mean, they knew how to sell.
I think talking about that was like the heyday for comic books. The 80s and 90s, I feel like was, when they were making, like when they made 8 million or they sold 8 million copies of X-Men, the offshoot series. Today, if a book sells 100,000 copies, it's doing good.
Yeah. Books that are, it's weird. With comics today that are considered big hits sales wise would have gotten canceled in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah. And you had guys talking about the 70s, you had guys like Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, knocking out stuff. You had Chris Claremont, they were churning and burning stuff out, and there was a lot of good writing. I want to go into this in the second hour, Bobby, but kind of like with this pop culture thing, there was a lot of good writing, but it was always to sell books or to sell products or whatever. And I kind of feel like with the pop culture thing, right? Going back to the commercial, you can't, like, the cartoon was free to watch, right? It came out every week. Like G.I. Joe, they had seasons, He-Man, G.I. Joe, My Little Pony, or whatever. They always came out in the fall, in September or so, leading up to Christmas, the retail season. And so like there was creating a demand, it's like creating this demand. And then, as we've grown up, I mean, like, I'm 44, and as we grow up and we've grown up, it's kind of like that nostalgia looking back. You're like, man, yeah, I loved, like I bought a couple of shirts today at Walmart. They had them on sale, and one of the shirts that I picked up was a Rick and Morty shirt. And it's because I like that show, and
Well, and back then too, I mean, when we watched Transformers on TV, we wanted to go get the comic.
Yeah.
I wish today, as big as the movies, the Marvel and DC movies are, I wish that people would leave Avengers Endgame and go, man, I got to go buy me some Avengers comics.
That's the crazy thing about it, because I want to talk about that in the next hour too. We've got to wrap this hour up, Bobby. Okay. But we're gonna come back. I'd like to nerd out a little bit on this next hour if you don't mind. All right, everybody, you're tuning in today. My special guest is Bobby Nash. He's been on the show. I love having you on the show, Bobby. And y'all, we don't just talk on the show. I call Bobby up every so often. We'll talk and just chit chat about whatever, and we stay in touch all the time. So I'm glad that we can have a chance to talk with all y'all today. So we'll be back in a few minutes.